Hi, welcome again. I have some statistics and information and observations about persecution in 2020. Prior to that also, I hope everybody had a lovely Christmas. I apologise if this is distressing or upsetting, but I would say that how can we pray for people who persecute us if we don't know that the persecution is happening? And as we know, when one suffers, we all suffer. We will suffer anyway. It would be nice to know why, I guess, and try to do something about it. So without further ado, here I go. Okay, so there are two reports. So I'm going to read some excerpts. There is widespread evidence showing that today Christians constitute by far the most widely persecuted religion. Finding once again that Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world, the Pew Research Center concluded that in 2016, Christians were targeted in 144 countries. And that's a rise from 125 just 1 year prior to that in 2015. So we'll see a trend, a basic trend for anybody who's paying attention, of increase rather than decrease. According to Pew Research, Christians have been harassed in more countries than any other religious group and have suffered harassment in many of the heavily Muslim countries of the Middle East and North Africa. Reporting a shocking increase in the persecution of Christians globally, Open Doors, which is a Christian persecution NGO, revealed in its 2019 watch list report on anti-Christian oppression that approximately 245 million Christians living in the top 50 countries suffer high levels of persecution or worse. And that was 30 million up from 2018. So this year's figures are 260 million, which is up another 25, so an increase of 55 million in just 2 years. Open Doors stated that within 5 years, the number of countries classified as having extreme persecution had risen from 1, i.e. North Korea, to 11. And other organizations have highlighted the increasing threat from aggressive nationalism or ultra-nationalism in countries such as China and India. India, we will see, unfortunately, or we have seen, has an increased problem with the persecution of Christians. So where was I? I do apologize. All right, these are growing world powers, I read, as well as from Islamist militia groups. According to Persecution Relief, 736 attacks were recorded in India in 2017, and that was up from 348 in 2016. So that's almost a 100% increase, with reports in China showing an upsurge of persecution against Christians between 2014 and 16. Government authorities in Zhejiang province targeted up to 2,000 churches, which were either partially or completely destroyed or had their crosses removed. And I guess I've missed out many of the stories of desecration, vandalism, destruction, setting on fire, etc., of places of worship, specifically churches, and also like home church groups, etc., because I just don't have the video time to, I'd be doing it constantly. But if, for anyone's reference, just off the top of my head, if you put into any popular search engine church desecrations in France and then hit images, you will see an image which is basically no area of France seems to have escaped from having its churches desecrated. It says here, evidence shows not only the geographic spread of anti-Christian persecution, but also its increasing severity. So not only do we see, therefore, a larger number of Christians going up in categorization from maybe mid to high to extreme, we also see that the classifications, themselves are becoming, incorporating more and more severe instances of persecution. It says here that in some regions, the level and nature of persecution is arguably coming close to meeting the international definition of genocide, which was accorded and adopted by the UN. The eradication of Christians and other minorities on pain of the sword or other violent means was revealed to be the specific and stated objective of extremist groups in Syria, Iraq, Egypt, northeast Nigeria, and the Philippines. I'd just like to say, just an aside, Nigeria this year is in the #1 position for likelihood to be killed for confessing Christ, whereas it's still, I believe, only 11 only in the top 50. So there are 10 other countries where there is more severe or higher numbers of persecuted Christians, and yet Nigeria is number 1 for murders of Christians. An intent to erase all evidence of the Christian presence was made plain by the removal of crosses, destruction of church buildings and other church symbols. The killings and abduction of clergy represented a direct attack on the church's structure and leadership. Where these and other incidents meet the tests of genocide, state parties to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide have a duty not only to bring perpetrators to justice, but also to prevent attempts at genocide. The main impact of such genocidal acts against Christians is internal displacement and exodus. So again, you may recall during the year when I've made videos, for instance, with Nigeria, one of the videos that I recall, though I don't recall the exact details, was that an internally displaced people's camp had been attacked. So these people were already fleeing persecution or some other form of natural disaster potentially. They were displaced peoples. They were in a camp for safety and security, and that was then attacked. So it's pretty disgusting behaviour on the part of the perpetrators. Sorry, it does just get a little bit upsetting. In Palestine, Christian numbers are below 1.5%. In Syria, the Christian population has declined from 1.7 million in 2011 to below 450,000. That's sickening. And in Iraq, largely through the ethnic cleansing of ancient Christian communities from the Nineveh plains, Christian numbers have slumped from 1.5 million before 2003 to below 120,000. I mean, they're both big numbers, but any grasp of maths will show you that that's a radical decline. Christianity is at risk of disappearing, representing a massive setback for plurality in the region. It is that plurality which has been a key for security and stability in the region for hundreds of years. And I would add that the risk of Christianity disappearing in these regions is not only an economic and politically, political stability issue, it's also a Great Commission issue for anybody who's Christian and is watching. In its 2017 Persecuted and Forgotten report on Christian persecution, ACN stated, in terms of the number of people involved, the gravity of the crimes committed and their impact, it is clear that the persecutions of Christians is today worse than at any time in history. Given the scale of persecution, the response of the media and Western governments has come under increasing criticism. Former Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs told the House of Lords, which for anybody who doesn't know is part of the parliamentary process within the United Kingdom, he told them, the persecution of Christians throughout much of the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia and elsewhere is one of the crimes against humanity of our time. This echoes the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Fuad Tual, who said, does anybody hear our cry? How many atrocities must we endure before somebody comes to our aid? Given the scale of persecution of Christians today, indications that it is getting worse and that its impact involves the decimation of some of the faith group's oldest and most enduring communities, the need for governments to give increasing priority and specific targeted support to this faith community is not only necessary, but increasingly urgent. So for any, I think I'm going to stop reading that report actually. I'll put the link to it in the description for anybody who wishes to, to listen to it being read or to read it yourself without the, without the, yeah, it's just pretty sickening actually. I feel a bit sick. Okay, I'm going to read you a small excerpt from Forbes, and then I'm going to get on to something hopefully hopeful. So it says, it's talking about the 2020 World Watch List, which is produced by Open Doors annually, not the 2021, obviously. Each year matches up with the year it is. So it says, the report identifies that in 2020, 260 million Christians live in World Watch List top 50 countries where Christians are at risk of high, very high, or extreme levels of persecution. This is up from, as we said previously, 245 million the year before. The report also emphasizes some important negative changes within global trends of the persecution of our brothers and sisters, Christians. Furthermore, it identified that countries which had previously avoided more intense levels of persecution, such as Sri Lanka and Burkina Faso, have in the reporting period experienced destabilizing violence, highlighting the fragile persecution context in West Africa and South Asia. The report suggests, however, that we should be positive about the future for persecuted Christians globally, as faith actors across the world are standing firm and strengthening communities against the odds. Church leaders, wider church networks, and faith-based non-governmental organizations provide a lifeline of care in isolated places where no other help is forthcoming. However, the numbers and the narrative gives a very different impression. According to the report, the situation in China continues to worsen as more and more churches in China are experiencing pressure at the hands of the Chinese state. I'd just like to add myself at this point that an actual mothers' meeting was raided by Chinese authorities, a mothers' meeting in a residential house with children and mothers, in case anybody doesn't know what a mothers' meeting is. Okay. Indeed, in the reporting period, over 5,500 churches have been destroyed, closed down, or confiscated. In India, Christian minorities are subjected to extreme persecution, which manifested in at least 1,445 physical attacks and death threats against Christians in 2019. In Nigeria, oh God bless Nigeria, in 2019, approximately 1,350 Christians were killed for their faith. Obviously, that doesn't include those who are internally displaced or suffer wounds or are kidnapped for intersex slavery or just burnt out of their houses or who are pretending to be Muslim. Indeed, these numbers do not give much hope to the persecuted. You can say that again. One must acknowledge the great contribution of faith leaders standing up for the persecuted. However, it's important to recognize that their assistance can do only so much if states and international actors do not step up their game and address the issue. It's crucial to realize that more and more states are waking up to these issues and recognizing that it requires a comprehensive response. So in Britain, we had a government, I don't know what you'd call it. Well, it was a government report. It culminated in the Bishop of Truro 2018 giving lots of advice. In fact, I did have that up on my computer, but I'm just going to grab that again because there were a couple of stats that I wanted. Do excuse me. Okay. Anyway, what was I saying? Yes, so we had that at the end of 2018. Also, we had, which was pretty hopeful actually, the British government said that on the basis of Christian persecution, which is pretty unlike them to give specific reasons like that, especially if they're pro-Christian sentiment, they would cease giving additional aid to Nigeria, which is obviously problematic in terms of the people who receive that aid. But at the same time, the Nigerian government, even though, you know, attacks happen in the town where the president grew up, seem to be oddly silent, or, I mean, if you've got a suspicious turn of mind, just downright looking the other way at the moment. So maybe, hopefully, some financial pressure can address that. So I guess I've got some short quotes. Okay, these were the recommendations actually of the Foreign Office: to seek a Security Council resolution urging all governments in the Middle East and North Africa to protect Christians. We know that hasn't happened. I don't know whether the Security Council resolution was delivered, but I do know that Christians are not being protected specifically in those areas, and other persecuted minorities to be protected also, and to allow UN observers to monitor the necessary security measures. So it's pretty poor preparation because I didn't know I was going to read this, but I haven't checked out which of these have come to fruition. That they were to identify a label for Christian persecution. We love a label. To better inform and develop tailored Foreign and Commonwealth Office policies in response. to consider imposing sanctions, we have done that, on perpetrators of serious human rights abuses against religious minorities, including Christians. The report was into Christian persecution. Establish a stream of the Magna Carta Fund dedicated to helping persecuted Christians. All Foreign Office staff at home and abroad should have mandatory training on religious literacy subject to resources, and British embassies and high commissions in relevant countries should deliver tailored responses to any violation of freedom of religion or belief. It just makes you wonder, I mean, what tailored response would you give to, for example, Fulani militants having rolled into your village and set fire to everything and macheted people to death, you know, Christians to death, I should say, and falling into the narrative trap there. So for further information, there's lots of stuff here. If I just click on the actual report, if I can find it again, I do apologize, but this is what you get for doing stuff off the cuff. I don't want to play a video. Thanks ever so much. No, thank you. Okay, so I can't find it, is the answer. I will do. I'll stick it in the description. But again, right, so in conclusion, because this was going to be a short video, I guess some backstory, like I prayed for a focus, for God to give me a focus, specifically whilst I was at Speaker's Corner, and I didn't know where he was going to lead me. And I certainly didn't know that it would take up so much time in distressing images and stories. But what I would say, I guess, Bible verses, these are the verses that keep me hopeful, I guess. It's 1 Peter 4:13. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also in the revelation of his glory, you may rejoice with exultation. And 1 Peter 4:16. But if anyone suffers as a Christian, he is not to be ashamed, but to glorify God in this name, i.e. a persecuted Christian. Matthew 5:44, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. So please do pray for the CCP, I guess, which is the Chinese Communist Party, which is headed by Xi Jinping at the moment, for Boko Haram, which is a tribal, it's a tribe in Nigeria who have adopted Islam, for ISWAP, which is an offshoot, which is the Islamic State West African province, because ISIS is growing in Nigeria, for the Hindu nationals in India who persecute Christians, for the government in North Korea. I think it's still Kim Jong-un, I believe so, if he's not having a day off. Where else? I mean, there's just everywhere. What I'm going to do is in my next video, I'll have some graphics as well. I believe, I know I will. I don't just believe it, I know it. The map, the current map of persecution, which is color coded, and you'll see just how much of the globe, just the 50 countries actually, because the rest of them aren't color coded. It doesn't mean it's not happening. It just means there's only 50 top places. So yeah, Romans 12:14, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. And then this is my favorite, one of my favorite verses. It's Jeremiah 29:11, and it's for I know the plans for you that I have, saith the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you a future and a hope. And I've actually, yeah, I've got that on my bracelet engraved because I just love it. So fear not, as the angels say. Yeah, I just think we have to keep on praying, because all of the governmental recommendations, all of the, I mean, Open Doors is slightly different because it's a Christian organization, but other NGOs, they don't publicize the power of prayer. And as Christians, we know that it is our first line of defense and offense. So please do pray for persecuted Christians everywhere. And please be specific in your prayers. If you've read a distressing story, like the 11 people who were murdered very recently in Nigeria, or the Pakistani young Christian girls who were kidnapped into marriage, it also happened in Nigeria, spoiler alert. Yeah, pray specifically for them, please do. And also for the survivors, because, you know, even with the strongest of faiths, it's very easy to become despondent and disheartened. And if your heart is heavy, I guess you're not able to, not always able to see the glory of the situation. And that's why Romans 8:28, which is for all things work to the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose, is often a retrospective verse. And at some point in the future, you get like a Romans 8:28 moment when you realize what God was forging within you during those trials and sufferings. So please do subscribe, like, comment, share the videos. More importantly, share the stories if those are two separate actions. And hit the little bell thingy because I'm told it helps. And on that bombshell of tech wizardry, as it were, I'm going to say I hope you have a happy new year, and God bless, and I shall see you soon. Bye-bye.